from 12.7% in 2006 to less than 2%, of 1.7% in 2024. This is one of the lowest gender gaps in the world, and it is something to celebrate. However, when you double click into what is the gender gap among different financial service providers, we see that there is a big difference between that overall gender gap of 1.6%, which was really driven by kind of equal access of men and women to mobile money, compared to some of the others. There's a positive gender gap, you could say, where chamas are more likely to use men, but still almost a quarter of men use chamas. Sometimes we'll hear chamas being discussed as a women's thing, but essentially men and women do use chamas as value to pilot. In fact, I always like to do this survey. How many of you are in a chama in this room? Exactly. How many Googles have bank accounts or cycle accounts or lever, right? Because there can be this narrative, we need to get people to shift or move away from chamas into the formal financial sector, and what we see is people like portfolio. But what we can see here is that SOFTOs have a relatively low gender gap, but banks, insurance, and pension have a very high gender gap. And so that's something we should continue talking about. And I am this slide. So in 2021 was the first time that we started tracking the gender gap at a county level. Now, there are 47 counties in Kenya, and Nipti Raviti won. There were 4 counties that had a higher percentage of women than in 2024 that they jumped to 20. So over here, these are all counties where there is a higher percentage of women reach with formal financial services than men, and this is the opposite. However, if you look at traditional banking, it's a very different picture. It's like an uphill bow, right? There's almost no counties where there is higher percentage of women who are reached than men. Now, the goal is that for war women to reach the men, the goal is to have a straight line in these bars, right? So that men will have equal access to financial services. Then let's move more into this credit, which is why we're here today. This graph shows you how people answer the question, do you borrow, do you save? It doesn't yet ask where you borrow or save. And what we've seen is that in Kenya, there is a strong savings culture. People have always saved more than they borrowed here in Kenya. But as you can see, between 2021 and 2024, that's changing a little bit, right? For the first time, really, we've seen savings dip. A lower percentage of people say they are saving, and credit continues to increase. And there's nothing.